Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I'm a 30-year-old woman living in Texas, and I've met my fair share of creeps, but what happened to me yesterday takes the cake. I don't drive, and I work in another city, so I have to take the bus to and from work. Mostly, I use the same stops on a daily basis. I just started using public transportation last year, so I'm pretty comfortable with it by now. That makes yesterday's experience all the more unnerving. I'd gone to the store after work to grab some soda and a reusable bag. With 2 liters in one hand and my purse in the other, I approached the bus stop and saw a woman sitting inside. I'm normally pretty shy and won't sit down if someone else is there, but I considered doing so this time. I was feeling fairly sick, and my feet hurt after being on them all day long. That idea quickly disappeared, though, as I got closer and could hear her muttering to herself. I did a quick glance as I walked past and saw that she had bags spread out over that side of the bench, and her shoes were off. I concluded she was probably homeless, and her muttering put me on guard. I walked past the stop, maybe 2 yards away, and set the reusable bag down uncomfortably. I pulled out my phone and began to text my best friend about what was happening. Then I started to hear what the woman was saying, things like, "Don't call me sweetie. I'll murder you." The hairs on my neck stood up. I was so curious to take a peek over, but I figured it was best not to risk antagonizing her. I didn't want her turning her attention on me. I kept messaging with my friend while the lady muttered the entire time, saying things like, "Don't call me sweetie. Don't call me honey. Don't call me anything. I'll wrap my hands around your throat and kill you." At this point, I was thinking I should get out of there. Maybe the bus was set to arrive any minute, though, and even though the station was just down the street, I was reluctant to try for it. I really just wanted to get home. It was kind of stupid, but she hadn't done anything yet to make me think she'd even noticed I existed. Around this time, though, I began to hear her saying something about a fat ass. Now, this certainly alarmed me, as I'm not a particularly slim woman, and fat ass is fairly gender-specific. But what really sent shivers down my spine was when I heard this, "Your phone doesn't scare me." Clearly, she was talking about me, as I'd had my phone out since I got there. Just as I was about to grab my bag, I looked over to the side. She was now just outside the shelter, staring at me with a look of intense hatred. There was still maybe 1.5 yards between us, but not enough to make me risk leaning over to pick up my bag and possibly give her an opening to attack. She started ranting again about how I needed to stop calling her all these things. Now, I could hear the other stuff I had missed before, things about how she wasn't going to fuck me, she wasn't going to worship me, I wasn't going to cost her her morals or her relationship with God. All kinds of insane stuff. I was looking anywhere but at this woman. I was completely terrified. She kept talking about murdering me and wrapping her hands around my neck. She sat back down, and I idiotically froze in place. I felt like I didn't even dare to lean over, even now that she was a safe distance away. This was happening next to a very busy road that connected directly to a highway. It gave me a false sense of security, I suppose. She kept muttering, staring at me the whole time. I slowly came to the conclusion that my bus wasn't coming anytime soon. Now, I was near tears. Suddenly, she jumped up. She was much more vehement now, and I was completely terrified, the most scared I'd been in my life. I saw a man crossing the street. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, I took a deep breath and hoped for the best. I leaned over to grab my bag, and I noped the fuck out of there, watching over my shoulder the entire way. I walked to the next bus stop and immediately called the police, who connected me to the right department. I told them what happened, though my physical description wasn't very good. I had hardly glanced at her, because I was worried about antagonizing her. Not long after, a family member happened by and gave me a ride home. Turned out I didn't have to bother with the bus at all. My brother lives in an apartment complex just down the road from that stop, and he told me she'd been sleeping there for about a week. He had a minor encounter with her last night. I guess in the end, they didn't find her. She was gone this morning, though, and still gone this afternoon, so perhaps someone else complained. I hope so, because not only do I fear for the safety of people who come into contact with her, but I also feel really sorry for her. I hope she can get the help she needs. I'm a fairly small 18-year-old girl, and this happened on a Saturday night, literally just last week. My friend Leah and I attended a football game, but at some point, we got pretty bored. We decided to head to a haunted house with our friends, Tara, Dawson, and Emma. Instead, it was a haunted corn maze, and honestly, we had a blast. Eventually, though, the night started to wind down, and Leah, Terry, and I decided to go back to Terry's dorm room so the hangout could continue a bit longer. We had dyed Leah's hair and were watching a movie when we heard 3 loud slams echo on the door. Suddenly, Terry's roommate went to check who it was. We heard someone grunt, then saw a man, who none of us recognized, shove his way past the door and into the bathroom. We were all completely confused. We poked our heads out the door only to see Terry's roommate laid out on the floor. The man had pushed him down just to enter the common area of the room. All of us agreed we had no idea who this person was. We started laughing together and making jokes about the situation because that's just how we coped with it at the time. Terry's roommate went to tell the front desk that someone had come into our room and started taking a shower. Again, it was a Saturday night, so we assumed this man must just be drunk or something and perhaps had the wrong room. Eventually, though, we started to hear rustling in the bathroom, followed by loud scratches and bangs on the door. We were getting scared at this point, so we locked ourselves in Terry's room together. Suddenly, we heard the bathroom door burst open, and we all turned toward our locked door. We jumped as the man began to slam his fists against it. His breathing was so deep and heavy, we could hear it through the thick wood. Leah and I screamed as the banging got louder and louder. He began throwing his entire body weight against the door. Terry was in the back corner of the room, spiraling into a panic attack. At first, we thought it must just be a drunk guy, but no one that hammered has the coordination to take a running start into a door. Finally, the banging stopped. We thought the man must have left, but we didn't dare leave the room to check. It was silent for a full 3 minutes before a weird scratching noise started at the door. It sounded like he was scraping his fingernails against it, like a dog trying to be let inside. "Let me in," he whispered. "Please, let me in. Please. I know you're in there. Let me in." Then he began yelling and slamming against the door again. How was no one else in this dorm hallway coming to help us? Fear was crawling up my body. I didn't know what to do. I have a stress disorder I take medication for, and this was not the ideal situation for me to be in. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor with my head in my hands, trying to calm myself. It had been 10 minutes since Terry's roommate left to get campus security. We finally called the front desk of the dorm as well. Apparently, they had already called security the moment our roommate got down there. So why was it taking so long for them to get here? The man continued trying to break down the door for another 10 minutes. Just as we really thought he was going to break through, the hinges were starting to shake. Campus security finally arrived, about 25 minutes after we had first asked for help. They sat the man down and started talking to him instead of immediately removing him from the dorm. At this point, I was pissed. What if we hadn't been somewhere with a locked door? What if we were outside? Would they still have taken 25 minutes to show up? The man claimed he hadn't been drinking, smoking, or doing anything, that he was completely fine. But as they questioned him, he got more and more violent. Finally, when he started fighting one of the officers, they had no choice but to escort him out. We could hear everything through the door. Campus security finally knocked and told us it was safe to come out. When we opened the door, something fell off and hit the floor. The cop's eyes widened when he realized what it was, a pocket knife that had been lodged into the door. Not only did these idiots take 25 minutes to show up, but they didn't even check the man or the surrounding area for weapons. What a joke. Leah started crying as we left the room. The security team decided to check the rest of the dorm. Lo and behold, they found a crumpled up ball of tinfoil with what looked like bugs in it. What a great investigative job. The dude was tweaked out of his mind and carrying a pocket knife, and all they could say was, "Have a safe night," before leaving. Safe night, my ass. We're all filing complaints with the campus next week about how the situation was handled, mainly because I know this man is still there. I saw him walking down the road just yesterday, like nothing had ever happened. Man, fuck campus security. And fuck that meat-eat-out man. I was around 12 years old at the time, growing up in Wolverhampton in the West Midlands, UK. Let's just say I didn't have the easiest upbringing. I was smoking, drinking, staying out late, and bunking off school. My mom was at work, and it was late morning, around 11 a.m. I wanted to buy some cigarettes, but since I was well under the legal age, I had to hang around outside the shop and ask strangers to buy them for me. About a mile and a half from my house, there was a little shop called the Spar. It was on a fairly busy road, with a row of hedges lining one side. A gap in the hedges led to a field beyond, and houses were on the opposite side. I stood about 10 paces from the shop, waiting for people to walk past so I could ask them to buy cigarettes for me. I usually second-guessed who might be willing based on their looks. I asked a lady, mid-40s, shoulder-length blonde hair, black business trousers, pink elbow-length jumper. She looked like she smoked, but she said no. I asked a man, maybe mid-50s, shaved brown hair, wearing blue jeans and a white shirt. He just ignored me. I was getting pretty desperate at this point and decided to ask anyone who came by. That's when I saw a rather disheveled-looking man trundling down the road toward me, just past the row of hedges. He was wearing dirty dark brown suit trousers and a buttoned-up, dark brown velvet jacket, also dirty. He had a black bowler hat on and limped as he walked. As he got closer, I was trying to figure out if he seemed like the type who might buy cigarettes for a 12-year-old. I noticed he was probably homeless, possibly in his late 50s or early 60s. I figured he likely smoked, so why not ask? What's the worst that could happen? As he approached, I gave him the usual line, "Excuse me, mate, would you be willing to go into that shop and grab some cigarettes for me?" He stopped and thought for a moment. "How old are you?" "I'm 15, almost 16. "All right. Which ones do you want?" He held out a dirty hand. I handed him my money and asked for 10 sovereign. I had the exact change. He walked into the shop while I waited outside, excited. I was finally about to get my cigarettes and could go home to chill out before making it look like I'd just come back from school. He came out and handed me 20. I was confused. "But I only gave you enough money for 10. I started to panic because I didn't have extra money to give him. At that point, he hooked my arm in his, holding me tightly against his side, and started walking toward the hedge-lined road. As we walked, he kept talking. "You can make up for not having the extra money for the cigarettes by doing other kinds of work." I was stunned. My mind went blank. I guess I was in shock. He led me through the gap in the hedges and into the field, still holding my arm tightly and talking nonstop. He was saying I could come to his house and help him fix roof tiles or something. The field was huge, stretching into even more fields beyond. The sound of cars behind me grew more distant. I couldn't see any houses for miles, just endless open land. He kept talking, but I wasn't taking in a word of it. My mind was racing. I realized I had to get away right now. He was still gripping my arm tightly. Suddenly, I yanked it back violently, my arm ramrod straight. It slid out of his grip quickly, and he went flying forward, landing in a heap on the ground. I stumbled back, almost falling myself. Terror shot through me. The man lay on the ground, groaning and holding his leg like he was in pain. "What did you do that for? You really hurt me. Help me up. Help me up." He stretched out his hand for me to grab. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, staring at this disheveled man on the ground, groaning in pain. But something didn't sit right. My gut was screaming at me to run. Why would I help him up? I bought you those cigarettes, didn't I? I helped you out. Why'd you do this to me? I took another step back, staring into his green eyes. Then, all of a sudden, he stopped groaning. He stopped holding his leg. He pointed his finger at me, locking eyes with mine. "You're a smart girl, huh?" It was like an electric shock ran through my body. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I just ran as fast as I could. When I got off the hedge-lined road and turned onto the next one, I finally slowed down, completely out of breath. I started bawling my eyes out, shaking uncontrollably. I kept checking behind me, trying to catch my breath, and didn't stop running until I got home. Needless to say, I was terrified of bumping into that man again. I never tried to buy cigarettes from that shop ever again. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.